listening to the Sports Renegades right here on SportstownChicago.com. Starting off the second hour here on SportstownChicago.com, we are the Sports Renegades.
Doing the Bears Pregame Show.
And, yep, I just saw something. Bears captains tonight, along with Jeremiah Ratliff, even though he's inactive. Jared Allen, Roberto Garza, Kyle Long, Sherrick McManus.
Sherrick McManus?
The only one who really deserves to be a captain is Jared Allen, just because he's a veteran.
Which Jared Allen, I heard, is a really good presence in the locker room, except when you have a bunch of negative people, it doesn't really matter anymore. Why is Sherrick McManus a captain?
Special teams. You have to have a special team.
You have to have a special
team. I assume he's the special teams captain.
What special teams?
Yeah, really, remember Patrick Manley was always the special teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was another guy that you have to assume was a pretty good leader in that locker room.
Oh, yeah.
He's gone...
I mean, at one point,
real leadership.
They had some really good captains. I mean, they had Urlacher and Briggs and Manley and
then you had Kreutz.
Nolan Kreutz, yep.
Yes, Nolan Kreutz Roberto Garza. I mean, there was a lot of great people in that locker room that led this team to a Super Bowl appearance. And
Jay Cutler.
Well, of course.
The thing about him is that the media likes to pick on him is when he's upset, he makes sure everybody knows that he always has a pissed off look. He's always just looking mad on the sideline, giving a grin, never talks to anybody, never smiles.
He has that thing with his neck where he goes
Twitches,
like that. He has like a twitch in his neck. Everybody doesn't like that, but I mean that's not really something he can control.
Which when you see Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, they're never doing that kind of stuff on the sideline where the camera's always on Jay Cutler.
That's true. It always is because they're always trying to get something. Like, what's the next negative story I can write about Jay Cutler?
I always hate on Sunday night games when they use his picture from like 2007. Where he's got the double chin.
Right.
And he looks pretty chubby.
Right.
And I hate the fact that they still use that one.
Yeah, it's like he wasn't even on the Bears then.
Yeah.
He's on the Broncos.
Which, I mean, it's because Jay Cutler is probably one of the media's favorite football players to pick on for no reason.
Yeah.
And now especially because he's struggled this season. If he had a much better season, it's whatever. As long as he's doing his job, winning games, being a good quarterback.
And that's all that the Bears fans want. I mean, that's all that all of us want as a fan. We just want to see him do well. I don't really care about his the field stuff as long as he's winning.
You can piss off the media all you want. As a Bears fan, I don't care.
I don't care either. I just want him to win.
And the thing is, how many times have you ever heard of Jay Cutler getting in trouble outside of football? Like, have you ever heard of Jay Cutler getting a run-in with the police or hitting someone at a nightclub? You never hear anything negative about Jay Cutler off the field.
Yeah, and you always hear negative, especially now. You always hear negative stuff about everybody off the field, pretty much. All these star players are going down with child abuse charges and
or even
a whole bunch of other stuff.
You always hear about other quarterbacks doing good stuff with charities and whatnot. But
exactly.
I saw something retweeted the other day where I think this guy on Twitter, his daughter was battling cancer, and I think Cutler signed a he signed a hand towel, his hand towel, and he signed it and gave it to her. That didn't go. No one noticed that.
Of course, nobody knows about that.
No,
Everyone
and Jay
just
Cutler has
knows
like a
about
diabetes foundation too.
And
that's right.
And he's a big donator, obviously, to other foundations.
Yeah, I mean, people don't even look at the good things that Jay Cutler does. I mean, another thing, people want Cutler out of town. Like, well, who's going to replace Jay Cutler? Like, do you want to go through like a 5 or a 4-win season and then the Bears draft a QB, another quarterback bust?
Well, if you look at the draft and you look at the remainder of the Bears' schedule, you'd like to think hypothetically the Bears are going to finish in the top 15. I think if the draft ended or began today, I think the Bears would pick 11th.
Yeah, what they needed.
That's pretty good.
Jacksonville and Oakland will have the top 2 picks, and they're not drafting a quarterback after investing very heavily into Blake Bortles and Derek Carr. So they'll have those picks up for trade. The Bears can go and trade for and draft Mariani.
It's possible.
Mariota. Mariani is which I was going to say earlier.
Mariani is the Bears' kick returner.
Talking about special teams, that's one of the pluses. I mean, he looks educated when returning kicks. He knows when to come out with it. He knows when to kneel it. And
he can make it past the 20-yard line, which is exciting.
So that'd be one of the things.
Because that's been a struggle for every returner.
And that's why they got rid of Chris Williams.
Which he did actually a pretty decent job, except, that game that he had 10 kickoff returns. You don't want your kickoff returner having 10 returns because you're giving up a touchdown on every drive.
Right.
It's interesting because we were talking about the quarterback selection in the draft. Like you said, Oakland and Jacksonville. But who else do you see taking quarterbacks? Probably the Titans.
The Titans should.
The Titans.
Take a quarterback.
Zach Mettenberger. He's looked okay.
Yeah.
A couple starts. You still have Locker. Do you trust Locker?
He's a free agent at the end of the year.
That's right. He is. His rookie deal is done.
The Bears could try to get him as a backup, maybe. I don't know. We'll have to see.
What other teams?
Tampa Bay.
The Buccaneers. Do you like Mike Lennon? I wouldn't.
No. The Jets.
The Bills, possibly, if they're not liking Kyle Orton, although he's done pretty well this year.
Redskins, that's another interesting one.
I read a report that said Jay Gruden has had it with RG3 and has put in a request to the front office to get rid of him.
See, I like that because I've never been a fan of RG3. I know he did good his rookie year, and they made it to the playoffs. I think it was 2010 or 2011. But I'm not a big fan of him. He just gets injured. He makes dumb plays a lot. I think they would be a good candidate to go out and get a quarterback and build him up.
His mechanics are also very poor.
Yes, they are.
How funny it would be if Cleveland drafted a quarterback and had him playing instead of Johnny Manziel.
Oh, I would love that. But that would be something. Hoyer's done good. There's no reason to think that this team won't be competitive next year and a couple years later. This team could be competitive. They have a pretty good offense. Their defense is serviceable. They're 7-5 for the first time since 2007. So it's a pretty exciting thing for the Cleveland Browns fans. And I think Hoyer's doing good, and there's no reason to have Manziel be playing right now.
Exactly. So why did they make the move? I understand the struggles of Hoyer.
I think they wanted to give Johnny Manziel a chance to unseat Hoyer.
And then he got that touchdown, and everyone freaked out. Oh, he should be starting. If Johnny Manziel was starting, they'd be lucky if they had 4 wins.
Well, another thing, it was a rushing touchdown. It's not like he did it with his arm.
Right. So picture this: the Bears are 7-5. Cutler's played pretty well, and he struggles one game, throws a couple interceptions, and
here comes Jimmy Clausen.
Well, also remember the Bears wouldn't be doing that. They wouldn't be doing that because Bears Nation would go crazy. And remember, the only other time I can remember Jay Cutler receiving attention outside of football was when he called off his wedding with Kristen Cavallari for the first time.
Right.
They were all over him, and it's just kind of like, why do you care? Can't you just leave the man alone? He wanted to have more of a private life, and with her doing that reality show, he wasn't going to really have that. And then it went back on, and then people were all over him again about, well, why would you call it off in the first place?
Right.
Let me ask you guys this. We were talking about teams ahead of the Bears in the draft that could possibly take a quarterback.
The Jets.
You guys see the Giants taking a quarterback?
No.
You still trust Eli Manning there?
Is Eli Manning a free agent next year? Or
no, he has a couple more years. I think he recently signed
and he's got a pretty hefty salary.
Honestly, Eli Manning's the least of their problems. I think a lot of it has to do with their defense,
and no offensive line.
Yeah,
and
that they have good offensive weapons. It's just their offensive line as a whole. They're sort of like the Bears, where Eli Manning's comparable to Jay Cutler in the fact that they're both not necessarily bad quarterbacks, are having bad years. They have good weapons, but it's all that meshing together. A lot of it has to do with the coaching, maybe.
And the turnover problem, because Manning's always been up there with the interceptions, too.
That's true.
Although a lot of Eli's problems are he has such a young team, it's a lot of running the wrong route, and then he's firing an interception. A team that really should probably start to think about the future probably is Denver. Peyton Manning's 38. New England drafted Jimmy Garoppolo to have another quarterback groomed under Tom Brady.
Right.
The Denver Broncos only have Brock Osweiler, who's just a veteran swingman quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
No, Osweiler's...
Journeyman.
No, Brock, he was only drafted 2 years ago.
Was he really?
Yeah, he's got to be only 25, 24. He was out of Arizona State.
Really?
He's a big guy. He's like 6'7".
So I guess they're assuming he's going to be the replacement for Peyton Manning whenever he decides to retire.
Do you know what round he was taken in?
4th or 5th.
See, that's not the kind of quarterback you want Peyton Manning to groom. Where New England drafted Jimmy Garoppolo, 2nd-round pick. Another team that's probably looking like they need another, are going to probably want to have a quarterback is Arizona. I mean, Carson Palmer tearing his ACL again, and then Drew Stanton's kind of showing that he's not getting the job done.
Yeah,
but
that's a good point.
Carson Palmer just got that new deal, didn't he?
Yeah, he did 3 years. 3 years.
Okay.
I don't know how much of it is guaranteed. Another interesting team is St. Louis.
Yeah,
what do you do with the Sam Bradford situation?
I don't know what you do with Sam Bradford. I mean, he can't even play an NFL game.
You look at that defense and some of the offensive weapons. I think Trey Mason has established himself as a starter there, and then they also have Tavon Austin and a couple other wide receivers.
Zach Safety has had a bad year, but I just think it's an off year for him.
Even if he bounces back, that's a good problem. Mm-hmm. It's a good problem to have if you have multiple running backs.
Except they don't really have wide receiver weapons. Tavon Austin hasn't developed very much since being drafted 5th overall. And, I mean, he really hasn't had that great of an offensive line around him. I mean, Sam Bradford, he was like a really hyped coming out of college, and then...
Well, he played really well his first few years in the NFL.
He did, and then he started getting injured, and then he kind of realized he didn't really have... He was in the Jay Cutler situation with no offensive talent around him other than his running back.
Right, and now they have a lot more talent, and Sam Bradford's not playing because he's hurt.
Right, and speaking of wide receivers, maybe they target Amari Cooper in the draft, which would make a lot of sense.
Right, I mean, they need to get wide receivers pretty badly.
Yeah, they do.
Just like a lot of teams. And the Bears could probably use some more wide receiver depth because who do they have other than Marshall and Jeffrey?
Well, that's the thing. It's pretty much Marshall, Jeffrey, and then bust.
I mean, that's really all they have. Where, like, Denver's got Demaryius Thomas, Wes Welker, Emmanuel Sanders.
Julius Thomas.
I mean, the Bears have Forte, Bennett, Marshall, and Jeffrey, except at the wide receiver position, if one of them were to go down and actually miss a game, they really don't have much in terms of depth.
Right. Well, that's also an interesting thing that goes back to Phil Emery. I mean, this team wasn't really drafting any depth besides their starters. I mean, they have nobody to back people up, and last year they were lucky where the only significant player who was hurt was Jay Cutler, but... now all these other players are getting hurt, and they have nobody to back them up, and that has to do with a lot of the late-round drafting that they're doing, which isn't turning out well.
I mean, the starting linebackers really aren't that great, and then look who they have backing up. Do you trust the backups when you don't trust the starters?
Right.
Yeah, it's an untrustable situation.
Actually, I lied. Brock Osweiler was drafted in the 2nd round.
Okay.
So he is...
in what year?
2012.
2012 draft.
Round 2, pick... 57 overall, stands at 6'8", 240. It's a big guy.
That is a big guy. We'll have to see.
Out of Arizona State.
And I mean, he's got a great guy to replace, and so I'm sure Peyton Manning's teaching him a lot and stuff. So I mean, he could be pretty good.
Right. Attended Arizona State University as a true freshman in 2009. He played in 6 games with 1 start. Became the first true freshman to start a game for the Sun Devils since. Take a guess. Jake Plummer.
Okay.
He finished the season completing 54-55 passes for 249 yards. Yada, yada, yada. Professional career. Yeah, drafted 57th overall. John Elway drafted Osweiler with a plan to let him learn behind Peyton Manning for a few years before taking over as the starter. He made his NFL debut in Week 4 against the Oakland Raiders. The Broncos won the game 37-6.
Yeah, it's because they're playing Oakland, but...
Exactly. But, I mean, it's interesting. I guess that's their plan, too. We're talking about Garoppolo with the Patriots and now Osweiler. How much longer do you guys see Peyton Manning playing?
Maybe until he needs another neck surgery.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could see him finishing out his contract with Denver.
Did he sign a 5-year contract? Is that what it was?
Yeah, and this is year 3, so he could finish out that deal because he's still playing, and it seems like he's getting better.
Yeah, well, he's getting better. He also has a lot more weapons. I'm not sure if he was, for instance, if he was like on the Colts right now. I don't know how much worse or better he'd be doing than Andrew Luck if he was still on the Colts.
Maybe T.Y. Hilton would be looking more like Demaryius Thomas if that was the case.
I mean, that's true, too. I think Peyton Manning will play on his contract.
I think he could even get another season out of Denver, too.
I think he's really dying to win another Super Bowl because, I mean, he only has one. It was against the Bears, unfortunately. But, I mean, he only has one.
He's lost twice in the Super Bowl.
And he's lost twice in the Super Bowl now.
2.
Eli has 2. I mean, Drew Brees only has 1. But for some reason, it always feels like Drew Brees is more of a winner than Peyton Manning almost, it seems like.
Well, Drew Brees has won the only Super Bowl he's played in.
Right. And then, of course, Tom Brady. So, I mean, in order for Peyton Manning to be considered, among Tom Brady, to be on the same sort of, to be on